All right, today we're going to be talking about electrons and why they are the key to your health. And I promise it's not going to be boring. I'm sure a lot of people hear the word electrons and get instant PTSD from high school chemistry or wherever you learned about it. Um, but once you can conceptualize how electrons interplay with your health and physiology, it becomes a little bit more exciting. And hopefully you agree with me by the end of this. First, we're going to have a quick word from our sponsor, Natural Blocks. Natural Blocks are high quality blue blocking glasses that are designed to help protect you from the damaging effects of blue light. So not all blue light is bad. Blue light from the sun in natural quantities and balances is completely beneficial for our health. But when you're exposed to too much artificial light from screens, overhead lights, basically LEDs and other artificial sources, they throw things out of balance. So one of the hacks in the modern world is to wear blue blocking glasses. And there's basically two strategies to go about this. One is to wear daytime glasses during the day when you're on screens, and they're going to block the majority of the peak spike of blue light. So screens emit blue light, and there's a certain wavelength that's the most damaging to your health. So we're blocking the majority of that, but you don't want to block all blue, or else you're going to be falling asleep during the day. And the other strategy is at nighttime to wear nighttime blue blockers, which physically need to be orange or red. A lot of people think they can just wear their clear blue blockers at night, but that's not really going to do anything. So you have to make sure it's blocking the full spectrum from 400 to 550 nanometers, which is the entire blue and part of the green spectrum. Because if you don't block that and your eyes are exposed to blue light at night, it's going to suppress your melatonin. And then not only will you have poor quality sleep, but your body's not going to regenerate at night because melatonin is one of your body's primary antioxidants and repair molecules. Okay, so you can go to naturalblocks.com, that is NATURO blocks.com, and use the code NATUROFAM for a nice little discount. And we have a 5-star review from Jack titled "The Best Blue Blocking Glasses!" exclamation point. I absolutely love my blue blocking glasses. Not only are they fashionable, but they truly do provide me with a better night's sleep. Plus, Drew and Mar are so responsive, have done their research, and are very knowledgeable about the best type of lenses to have. So thank you very much for that kind review, Jack. And let's get into electrons. So we'll start off by talking about what are they. So if you remember the periodic table from high school or whenever you learned it, maybe elementary school actually, I don't know. You can type in the comments, when did you first learn about the periodic table? But anyways, it has all of these elements. So your carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, fluoride, whatever. And all of those atoms have a proton, a neutron, and an electron, at least one. It varies on what the element is. But the electrons are circulating around the outside of the atom. And it's a little bit of a debate whether they're a particle or a wave. Supposedly, they're both simultaneously. I don't know. I don't have enough of a physics background to explain it on that level. But I think of them as these little packets of energy and information that are circling all of these atoms. Okay, so why are electrons important? Basically, the flow of electrons provides energy for our body. And the more energy we have, the better our body is going to function. So this flow of electrons is primarily transmitted through two different mediums. So we have water in our body. So 99.9% of the actual molecules in our body are water. So that's obviously a major component of us. These electrons can flow through that. We also have our fascial network, which is basically collagen from head to toe that connects your entire body. And electrons also flow through that. So those are the two main semiconductors that allow these electrons to flow. And when you have good flow, then you have good health. At the mitochondrial level, so you probably remember the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell, which is very accurate. It's obviously a gross gross simplification of what it is. But basically, your mitochondria has a component called the electron transport chain. And that's where electrons jump from protein to protein. And when that happens, it releases the energy that is stored and essentially produces ATP, water, and CO2. And all of those are very important byproducts. So when you have that electron flow in the mitochondria, then you can produce more energy. They also act as antioxidants. So oxidation is the technical definition is oxidation is the loss of an electron. And when you lose an electron, then you become unstable. So if you think about an apple, for example, if you bite into an apple, the oxygen starts reacting with the apple and it starts to turn brown. So that is oxidation or the loss of electrons. Another example would be rust. So when iron is exposed to too much oxygen, it becomes iron oxide, and that is essentially rusting. And that same process can happen in the body if we have too much oxidation or not enough electrons. So electrons act as antioxidants because they can help to stabilize those reactive molecules. Okay, and there's plenty of other functions of electrons, but those are some of the main ones. And we'll talk about where they actually come from. So that would be the obvious question: how am I going to get more of these guys? And food is I don't want to say it's the primary way. It's the primary way that we think about it, because when we think about how do we get energy, well, it must come from the food we eat, which is absolutely true, but it's not the only source. So food is composed of different molecules, which are composed of atoms. So for example, carbohydrates are carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, and those are all going to have electrons. So we break them down further and further as it goes into our body, gets into our cells, gets into our mitochondria. And at the end of the day, we're really just splitting those down into protons and electrons. And that's how our mitochondria is producing energy. So electrons from food, for sure. Grounding is probably the most significant source, the earth. So standing barefoot on the earth is a very important way to get more electrons. So there's a constant flow of electrons. Basically how it works is electrons are always flowing from a higher concentration to a lower concentration, and the earth always has a lot more than we do. So when you're connected barefoot, those electrons are flowing up through the bottom of your feet into your body. And basically every animal is constantly grounded except for birds. And humans used to be that way, of course, but recently with shoes, we're blocking that connection with rubber-soled shoes, at least. There's different kinds, which we'll talk about, that are more beneficial. But the earth is a very rich source of electrons. Sunlight, it doesn't really give us electrons directly, I don't believe, but when it interacts with the water in our body, it helps to free up electrons, and this is through that easy water mechanism. So basically what happens in the body, we have all this water in our body, and it's actually in the state in between a liquid and a solid called easy water. It's more, think of like Jello or a gel state. And when this water is exposed to red and infrared light as well as UV light, it creates this charge separation. So you get all of the positively charged things on one side, all the negative on the other side, and that creates a battery. And those that negative charge is mainly composed of electrons, free electrons, which we can then use for our physiology, okay? So this is probably actually one of the primary ways our body actually produces energy. I don't necessarily buy into the idea that ATP from mitochondria is the primary source of energy. I think it's an important piece, but I still think we have a long way to go in terms of discovering where this energy actually comes from for us. Okay, another way that we can get electrons is through movement. So when you're moving your body, this phenomenon called piezoelectricity occurs, and that's basically when there's some sort of mechanical stress that is causing an electrical charge to be created. So I think about like those handheld twist flashlights. So you're using some sort of mechanical energy in order to create this electrical phenomenon. So our bodies are doing the same thing, our collagen, our fascial networks. So when we're moving, then we're freeing up those electrons and they can travel across that semiconductor, the fascial system, and help with various functions. And I think this is actually probably a big piece in traditional Chinese medicine's acupuncture system. A lot of the meridians actually correlate with the fascial networks throughout our body. And when they're talking about this chi or life force energy, I think a lot of it actually has to do with the electron flow that's happening in those systems. Another way we can get electrons, which kind of ties into food, is through antioxidants. So like antioxidant-rich foods. So when you think about your flavonoids or carotenoids, or like vitamin A, vitamin C, vitamin E, selenium, those are all very potent antioxidants, which again, we're primarily getting from foods. You could also get it synthetically through supplements, but those are typically electron donors. So they're providing more electrons to the body. And, I think the whole antioxidant thing gets a little bit overhyped when we're talking about foods, but it's still an important way for our bodies to get more electrons. Okay, now the other logical question, maybe it's logical, maybe it's not, is what are the things that deplete our electrons? So if we're trying to get more electrons, if that's the ultimate goal, we can do it through the things I just mentioned, gathering more, but we also want to limit the things that are stealing electrons from us. So any type of oxidative stress, so that's a very broad term, but this stress could be physical. So say it's like overtraining, you're just, putting your body through a blender all the time, and it doesn't have enough chance, a chance to recover. So if you're not sleeping well, etc. Or it could be psychological stress as well. So that could be another form of oxidative stress. If you have too many toxins in your body, so say heavy metals or something like that, that can cause a lot of issues, and you're constantly going to be needing more electrons to put out those fires. So whenever you have inflammation, you're going to need more electrons to help deal with that. If you have hidden infections, that could also be a major source. Things like Wi-Fi or just like EMFs, or I shouldn't say like man-made EMFs. So Wi-Fi would be one of them. Blue light as well, excessive blue light. So all of those things are stressors on the body, and they're going to deplete your electrons. So you want to find ways to mitigate those, which we will talk about now. So let's go back to food. So what foods are highest in electrons? Honestly, if you're just sticking to a whole foods diet, you're going to be getting plenty of electrons. So eating things that are found in nature, minimally processed, and ideally fresh too. So when you have things that have been frozen or canned for a long time, they're not going to have as much of that energy in them. Whereas if you're getting some fresh, something local ideally, then that's going to be very helpful. One of the important things about electrons is that they get charged by the sun. So it's important that you're trying to eat locally and seasonally, because when you're eating seasonal foods, not only do electrons carry energy, but they also carry information about the environment. So say you're in a high UV environment, so somewhere close to the equator, or even in the northern hemisphere during certain times of year, the UV from the sun is much stronger, and that information is getting imprinted into those electrons, which then you consume into your body, and they are providing feedback to your body about what time of year it is, and how your body should respond accordingly. So I'm not too much of a purist about eating a seasonal diet, because I know it's difficult, especially here in Canada in the winter. There isn't a ton available. But generally, if you can try to eat foods when they're in season and limit out of season foods, then that's a good thing. But the main point is eating whole, unprocessed foods as much as you can. And there's going to be plenty of electrons in there. And try to get fresh as well. And organic, because part of the toxicity piece is something like glyphosate, which is the primary pesticide used on all of these crops, or not all of these crops, but many of them. That's going to cause a depletion of your electrons. Okay, so that is food. The next one is grounding, which we already talked about. Pretty self-explanatory. So basically just standing on the earth barefoot as much as you can. People often ask, how often should I do this? How many minutes per day? And realistically, you should be grounded all the time if you want to have optimal health. I know that's not necessarily realistic, but if you think about the way humans have lived for hundreds of thousands of years, they were basically always grounded. And I think that's just part of our biology. It's an important signal for our body to be gathering those electrons and controlling our inflammation. So just when you're outside, go barefoot as much as you can if you're in your backyard or whatever. Another way that you can get around this is to use grounding shoes or grounding footwear. So there's more products on the market now. There are sandals called Earth Runners, which are quite popular. There's also shoes where they have like a copper plug at the bottom to make sure you're grounded, and that's a good way to make sure that you're still getting those electrons. If you can't do that, you can also be touching a tree, for example. So trees are grounded. So even just touching that with your hands, if you're doing any gardening and using your hands, touching the ground, that's great. So all of that stuff is very helpful. Swimming as well, especially if, so probably the ideal place to get the most electrons would be walking on the beach on that wet part, because when it's wet, then you can conduct more electrons. So same thing with like early morning, if there's still some dew on the grass, then that would be an ideal way to supercharge your body. And swimming in natural bodies of water will also keep you grounded. So there's a bit of controversy around earthing mats, which are basically these mats that you can plug into the wall and they keep you grounded. I don't really know enough about the electrical part of it, not the engineering. Anyways, I'm not an electrician, but what I know for sure, what you do have to do before you plug it into a wall is make sure that you have a something to test whether that outlet is grounded or not. And if it is, then there's a much better chance it's going to be beneficial for you. A lot of people actually just skip that whole step, and instead of plugging it into the wall, you just get like a metal stake and it's attached to this mat. You plug it directly into the ground. And I've also heard some controversy around that and whether that's beneficial or not. But I would just say try it out for yourself. They're fairly inexpensive, and you can have them when you're sleeping. So if you are grounded when you're sleeping, then obviously that's a large chunk of the day, a good 7, 8, 9 hours where you're grounded, which would be awesome. And another thing I didn't mention earlier is that you can actually see this through something called dark field microscopy or live blood analysis. And this is basically just looking at your blood in real time. So they do like a prick of your finger and then look at it under a microscope, and you can still see the living blood cells. And there's some cool videos online about showing the difference before and after grounding. So even just like standing on the earth for 15 minutes and then doing a before and after of that, and you can actually see the red blood cells. Sometimes they'll be very clumped together. It's called a rouleau formation, and that's obviously not good for circulation if all your red blood cells are clumped like that. So when you get that electrical charge from the ground, then the blood cells start to separate and you have much better blood flow. So that's one of another main benefit of grounding. And that is called the zeta potential, basically charging up those each of those red blood cells so that they're repelling each other and creating better flow. All right, so sunlight, same thing as earthing. Realistically, you should be outside as much as you can. We're designed to live outside. Again, I know that's not possible for most people in the modern world, but spending some time, especially during the sunrise, is very important for your circadian rhythm. Getting out midday to get some UV as well, depending on what time of year it is. But just spending as much time outdoors as you can, okay? And it's important to get red and infrared light, so that's going to help to structure your easy water and create more of those electrons. UV as well is important. I don't remember the exact interaction, but you need all of those. So the point is you need to be outside at various points of the day, because in the morning you're not going to be getting much UV. Red and infrared is pretty constant. And another way you can go about this is things like saunas. So infrared sauna, like any type of sauna realistically, is going to provide infrared light. Photobiomodulation panels, so that would be like your standard red light panels are good. Infrared heat lamps, so if you can't afford a sauna, you can get like a $15-20 heat lamp, and those are great, especially applied locally to any injuries or specific issues. That'll help create more electron flow in that area. Okay, movement, pretty self-explanatory. I can't say if there's any one movement that's better than another for this, but generally moving your body. So whatever you like to do, even just going for walks and moving your body around, doing some dancing. Consistent movement, I think, is key. So it's better to be moving frequently throughout the day rather than just be like sitting all day in front of a desk and then go do a 30-minute workout where you exercise and then the rest of the day you're sitting at home watching Netflix, etc. You want to be constantly moving as much as you can, okay? For antioxidants, you're going to find them in a lot of foods. These are primarily plant foods, and it will depend on how they're grown, but they're all going to have various antioxidant nutrient profiles. So the general recommendation is to eat a wide variety of colors. So typically things that have these dark, or not necessarily dark, but bright or varying colors are going to have different antioxidant values in them. So just eating a wide variety of things, fresh local food, and that's going to be enough to get your antioxidants. There is definitely a time and place for supplementing with antioxidants, even if they are synthetic. It can be beneficial. So something like vitamin C, for example. So say that's one of the reasons why it's very common when you have a cold or flu, because your body is undergoing this oxidative stress and you need more electrons. So you can use all the other strategies as well, but vitamin C would be a good electron donor in that case to help quench some of that oxidative stress. Okay, so now we're going to talk about some of the electron depleters and how we can optimize that. So Wi-Fi and electromagnetic fields, basically distance is the most important thing. So whenever you have like a phone directly up to your head or a phone in your pocket or whatever it is, computer in your face, there's going to be quite a bit of negative fields coming off of that. So you want to try to create some distance whenever you can. For phones, especially if they're on their body, I would recommend having them on airplane mode. That's very beneficial. At nighttime as well, when you're in your bedroom, so during the day you can't avoid this stuff, even at night to a large degree, but especially at night, if you can try to create a sleep sanctuary where you don't have any of these electronics in there. So don't sleep with your phone under your pillow, especially, or even beside you, unless it's on airplane mode. Even then, it's probably not ideal. You're better off just getting that stuff out of the bedroom. Any smart devices, so like the Google Homes or whatever, get that out of your bedroom, probably get it out of your house in general, to be honest. But especially at night, if you can be diligent with that. You can also turn off your Wi-Fi at night. So what we do is plug it into one of those outlet timers. So it's plugged into that. And then for a certain period every night, say from 11 p.m. to 5 a.m., the Wi-Fi, we know it's off and it's not going to be emitting that signal. So that's probably one of the biggest sources of harmful EMFs in the average person's house. So paying attention to that. You can use Ethernet cords, especially if you have a stationary computer. Just plug in an Ethernet cord and reduce the Wi-Fi. Like I said, you're not going to be able to avoid this completely because it's everywhere. We have it, circulating in satellites now. But do your best. And blue light. So we already talked about some of these strategies, but if you're just outside, you're going to mitigate like 99% of all these problems, right? So just spend more time outdoors, barefoot ideally, and by getting that natural light from the sun and not getting too much blue light from your screens. If you are on screens indoors, then using screen filters are very effective. So Flux or Iris are good for your computer, for your phone. There's various ways to change the color settings, so just trying to be diligent about that. Whenever something is like super bright and stimulating, and you notice like, wow, this is like pretty stimulating, there's too much blue light and it's probably causing issues. So try to, dull it, make it a little bit more orange red, and that'll be very helpful. And then oxidative stress, this is too much to get into really, but obviously reducing your toxic exposures as much as you can. So trying to eat organic food, getting a water filter, avoiding things that are high in heavy metals like, amalgam fillings, get that stuff out of your mouth. Certain vaccines are going to have higher loads of heavy metals. So and same with certain pharmaceuticals and even some natural supplements too. So just be careful about what you're putting into your body and know it's there, and take the necessary steps to detoxify that stuff from your body. Which is a little bit, more of an in-depth conversation. So you're probably better off working with a health professional in that case if you have some of those issues. Managing stress is really important. Not over-exercising, so getting enough exercise but not overdoing it. It's a common problem I see. And addressing infections. But again, a lot of that stuff, not to say you can't heal on your own, but you may need some additional support working on those types of things. And we can do more of a deep dive into that stuff in the future. All right. Well, hopefully you're convinced that electrons are important, and now you have some strategies to gather more electrons. If anything, I would say focus more on that. Obviously, the electron depleting stuff is important too, but if you can just try to get as much electrical nourishment in your body as possible, that's going to be very beneficial. And the one thing that I would say most people are most deficient in is vitamin G, as some people call it, and that's grounding. So standing outside barefoot. It's the way we're designed. It feels good. Like everyone knows naturally, when you go to a beach, you just take your shoes off. You feel amazing. Everyone feels better when they're on vacation, even if they're eating crap and drinking much alcohol. And I think a big part of that is because they're spending more time outside, so they're getting that sunlight, but also they're grounding more often when you're at a resort or whatever. So give that stuff a shot. Let me know your thoughts, and we'll talk to you guys soon. Have a great day.